We're back here in the Dust Bowl today, the body shop. This is where we do all the dirty work to keep it out of the clean area up front in the finish shop. So this is all of our body work projects that we know are going to be nasty. So today we're working on the 68 Charger. This is one badass build we've got going. You can see from the rendering this thing looks really cool. We got a lot of detail. We've already done a lot of modification to it. So for instance, we've got the cowl shaved. It looks really good. We've got all the engine panels that we've been building on this thing. We've got the core support panels that have all been built. Firewall is a fabricated piece because there's a Hellcat sitting in here. It's going to make over 1,000 horsepower, 6-speed transmission. This thing is going to be bitchin'. So we've got all the marker lights and stuff like that shaved. We got the new grill fit up in there. That looks really good. A couple of things we did that we thought looked really cool, but we didn't want it to get too carried away and be in your face is you've got these scoops on the hood and on the doors that kind of mimic each other. We sunk those down about another inch. So these would not be as deep as you see right now. Same thing for the hood. They wouldn't be this deep. And we've also did our little rod trick where we do metal rod around this opening of the hood and shape that, give it a little character. And then the whole bottom side of the hood is actually paneled as well. So instead of having that bracing through there, it's all one piece, bead rolled, looks really cool. We've shaded the drip rails on this. So on these old cars, normally there'd be a drip rail here, kind of a gutter that would catch the rain and water would kind of run out of that thing. We cut this off. Now the problem when you do something like that, if you do one of these at home, that is where your roof skin welds to the car. It's spot welded in that drip rail, so you've got to come back and kind of rebuild this bottom section to weld it all together, but you can see how slick and cool that looks without a drip rail on it. Another thing we're doing on this one is flush glass. If you look at the rendering, how sick does that look where it just flows together, there's no rubber and there's no trim. Now here's how we would typically do flush glass, and I was going to do a video on this, but we're trying something a little different on this one. Now with a flush glass, if you take the windshield from this car, it's actually a lot smaller than the opening because the windshield rubbers in. There's a huge piece of rubber and you would pull the windshield in with the rubber and it's about this thick at the bottom. It's huge. So when you hold that glass in here, it's about 1.5 inches or so shy all the way around from even touching the pinch weld. So in that case, what we would do, we would build the car to match the window. We would extend the A-pillars out. We would rebuild the pinch weld. We'd extend the roof down a little bit. We'd do a lot like that to actually get that just looking like it's smooth one piece. But there's a company out there that's molding these out of acrylic, which is pretty cool. So we've got a couple of samples we're choosing from right here. This one's kind of a smoked color. This one's a bronze. Since the car is going brown, I thought that would look cool. So basically, once we get this in here, it's going to fit right up against the A-pillars like that. It's going to have that little bronzy look to it. Should look really cool. They actually take this acrylic and they shape it pretty much over an original windshield. The only problem you run into with the Charger, if you look up top, on the top of the A-pillar, there's this hump of metal right here that gets in your way. And then as you go down the A-pillar, the pinch weld kicks in, and the lower pinch weld is inset a little bit. So it makes it a little harder to do it, but apparently they have a mold that does fit this thing perfectly. They send it to you oversized where it's about 1 inch overhang all the way around the car, and then you can cut it to fit what you have. So we're doing that front and rear. So hopefully we'll be showing you that soon. It's a pretty good way to do it. I will say it's not the least expensive thing in the world to do, but as much metal work as that would take, I mean, it probably comes out a little bit better. So we got that for the glass. We got Kendigit door handles in here. Those look really good and slick. We've got cut and tucked bumpers. So Ben actually, we took new bumpers, we cut them down, and we inset them basically inside the body. We don't have one on here right now, but it looks really good. We also have quarter extensions that would have bolted onto this car, and we've molded all of that in. Looks really good. All our gaps are nice and straight. So it's coming along. It's looking really cool. Where we're at right now, we're in polyester primer. So we've done our metal work, we've done our filler work, and we're trying to get this thing laser straight. So when we're in the polyester, that's essentially like a sprayable filler. And what we use, Indasa Guide Coat. Now when we're doing this, this is one way that we find any low spots or anything that we might have in the bodywork. I'll show you a couple other ways that we can kind of look at this too. So good example right here that I should be able to show you in just 1 minute. All right, so we've got some guide coat laid down on here, basically just a powder. It's going to be a little bit of a guide for us. So as I start to block this, if it's flat, we're going to block it all the way. When I'm blocking, pretty much going at 30-degree angles in a crosshatch pattern. And you want to make sure you're staying in that pattern, because if you turn your block a little bit like that or anything, you can block into that wiggle and you'll block your guide coat away and you'll think like, oh, it's straight, I got it. But it's not, because you cut your block a little bit. So if you stay straight with it as you block, you can see that's just cutting that down. So I've got Indasa 80 grit on here right now. And I've talked about this paper before. There's no telling how long this piece of paper has been on this block, and we're still using it, so it's really good stuff. All right, so you can see how it's blocking pretty much all of that away. It's looking really good. Right here, see how there's a little bit of guide coat that we're leaving behind? That means that's going to be a slight wiggle or a slight roll in the panel. So I look at these 3 different ways. You've got a dent, you've got a wiggle, you've got a roll. This I would consider more of a roll. Like a dent, you know, it's going to be, you know, pushed in, something pretty serious. A wiggle is typically kind of a line in your panel where it just changes shape real quick. And these rolls are when you look down a panel and it's a gradual transition in it where it's not flat, but it's more of a long roll. So we use these longer blocks to kind of block through that. That way we're hitting our highs out here and we're able to block those highs down to our low spot, therefore leveling it out. Luckily, when you lay these polyester primers down, being a sprayable filler, they're really thick. So you lay a few good coats down, you can see you got plenty of material to work with, because I've been blocking for quite a while on that. And we're just going to keep knocking these sides down until we get rid of this guide coat and we'll know it's flat. Always wear a dust mask. I'm not, because I'm talking to you. One of these. Wear one of these when you're blocking. So another thing that we can kind of go over while we're doing this is the blocks and what type of blocks to use. We get those questions a lot. So these are the old kind of rubber foam blocks that we used to use a lot. The problem with these is they tend to flex a little bit. So if they start to get a wave in them, obviously you're not blocking flat anymore. I really like the big kid blocks. They're acrylic. Like they've got rigid ones like this. They've got longer ones. They've got some that are a little more flexible. They work really good. But if you want something that's not going to lie to you, it's the billet block. These are go-to blocks. These things are super straight and they cannot flex. So when you're blocking something and it's a flat panel, there is no choice for that thing to be nothing but straight. With these blocks, like I'm saying with this one, if it's super flat, you know this is going to work well because it's not going to bend. For instance, this charger quarter panel, if you look at it from the back to the front, it's got an arc all the way to the door. So if you put this block right in the middle of the quarter panel, you can see the ends aren't touching the panel, right? Got a wobble in it. This would not be a good block to use right in this area because you'd end up blocking the center down and creating a roll in it before you're able to do anything else. Now, as you pass this curve, it gets pretty flat. You can see it's perfect to use in that spot. So there's so many different areas that you can use different blocks. So with the big kid block, the one that has the balls on it, you can see you get flex out of this block. It's perfect to put up here. You can see it touches on each end. You just give light pressure. As you block, it's going to get all across that roll for you. Same thing on that front fender. That's what I blocked that with all the way through. That works really well. So it's really good to know and understand what each block does. Like down here, I would use a little bit shorter block, but it's a pretty flat area, so I can use that. You could get away with using that one as well. That works really good. So understanding that will help you kind of speed up the process and get a better result. So here's one other thing that I like to do. Now, when you guide code it and you block it, we saw exactly what that does, right? That helps us to understand that we've got a wiggle or, you know, we don't. But I don't solely depend on that. I depend on these right here. So what I like to do is I like to wet the panel down. Now, this is what I like the most. This is called Quick Check. Like 90 makes this stuff. If you spray this on, this simulates clear coat, and it'll stay wet for like 45 minutes. So, I mean, you've got plenty of time to sit back and look at it and check it out and do all that kind of stuff. So, we know that when we were blocking, we had just a little low spot right there. So we can kind of get back, catch the lights in it, and kind of walk those lights up and down that panel. And if we see those lights move at all, we know we've got a wiggle or a roll in our panel. It looks perfect. So we're able to get that little bit out in that polyester, and that looks really good. Like I said, that's going to stay wet forever, so we can go back and look at it. But here's another way you can do it. Okay, so the other way that we can wet this down is with our surface prep. This is what we would wipe our primers down when we're preparing to reprime or to paint, or we're about to lay down fillers. Just wet a paper towel. Rub it over your panel. I'll try not to get too much buildup on it. We just want to create a reflection. And then same thing, we can get back, we can check it out, we can look at it. Looks freaking awesome. The only downfall when you do it this way, it dries pretty quick, doesn't give you a lot of time to look at it, so you might have to wipe it down over and over again. Still, pretty good way to do it. I don't use water. I know people that use water to do it, but like I had one guy that I know that blocked on a hood and was like, yeah, man, the hood's flat, it's nice and straight. And then he was like, yeah, check it out. And he wet the whole thing down with the water hose. Well, like, what's the bottom of a lake look like? Tops of it's flat. Does that make sense? Because, you know, obviously the bottom of a lake is like, it's not flat, but the water is. It levels. So it was leveling all of his low spots, and it looked perfectly flat. So you can't really do it that way. You just want to create a reflection right on the surface. And that looks awesome. So I know that was quick and right to the point, but I think you kind of get the idea of what it takes when you're blocking over a car if you want to be able to get it straight. Obviously, I could talk to you about that for a whole day, but we got to keep moving on. So this side of the car is pretty much ready to be reprimed. So there's not a whole lot more we can do except maybe a little putty work. We'll see if we get that far. But one thing that I always save for the last part are the body lines. Now this car has a body line right in this area. It runs all the way down the middle of the car. And as you're blocking on these polyesters, if you kind of roll over that line or you didn't get it right in your filler work, your body line can be kind of wavy. So take 3/4 inch Endasa tape. This stuff is awesome. And I will pull a tape line right on that body line. I'm going to pull it right into the door. It matches that one. And we can go all the way down the side of the car, but for demonstration purposes, do this fender. So make sure our tape line's good and straight, right on that body line. Looks pretty good. I like this tape too because it's got a good sharp edge on it, not like a lot of masking tapes. Okay, I'll mask it up. So remember, this fender's got that contour in it, so this block is perfect for that. We're just going to block down to the tape line. We're not trying to block over it, tear the tape, or anything like that. We're just going to get right up to the edge of it. All right, so I've got Indas's 180 grit on here right now. That's what I'll do for the final before we do that last round of prime on this polyester. When we start blocking it, we normally start with 80 grit, and then we'll hop up to 180 and then normally reprime from there. So our first tape line was on the bottom of the body line and we blocked down to it. So now I've pulled one on top of the body line. We're going to block up to that. All right, body line looks pretty good. That's a super easy way to straighten out a body line and to make it pretty crisp. So one other thing I meant to mention, when you're doing the blocking, what we always try to do is have the car loaded down on the suspension that it's going to be on. You know, you can body work one on a rotisserie or on a cart or whatever, but, you know, these things move. And even though this one's braced up, it's got really good suspension and framework and all that under it, they can still flex a little bit. So we try to do all the work as the car is actually going to go down the road. The other thing that I try to do when I do this, instead of just hopping all over the car, I treat every panel individually, and then I basically make myself panels within the panel. For instance, like this body line to the top peak of the fender, I'll work this section until I get it exactly how I want it. Then I'll move to this one. And I won't leave this until I'm happy with how it looks before I move on down. So this is a good way to do it. So we still got a lot more of this to go. I've still got to straighten out those body lines. I've got to do a little putty work in the inner fender wells here just to straighten some of that out. And then we're going to see if we can't get it up front, get it masked in the booth, and get some urethane primer on it. And then that's the last step before we sand for paint. race. All right, so we got everything blocked and we got it back up here, masked it up and got it into urethane primer. So when we were in the back in the body shop, that primer you're seeing, that was a polyester. That's a really high build filler primer. Man, it's just some gnarly stuff. You can block it down, build it up. So once we get there, we don't really want to paint over a polyester. We like to paint over a urethane primer. So this is still a high build primer, but it's a urethane. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of wet blocking over this. I go back and forth on if I dry block or a wet block. Like, both work out really great. Some people like to dry block. It's very dusty. To be honest with you, the only reason I'm wet sanding right now is I didn't want to breathe any more dust. I wanted to wet sand. It still makes a nasty mess, but that's all right. So I'm wet sanding it with 400 on a block, and it's fine as long as we know we've got everything straight, because when you're blocking with 400 grit, you're not really leveling anything. You're just kind of slicking over that surface. But if you're already good and straight, you know you're good. The other things that we've done, we've painted the bottom of the car. Now, I'm emphasizing that because hop over to our Facebook page and check out some of the comments where we painted the bottom of the Camaro. Facebook people don't like it. They think we should have undercoated it. I tend to disagree with that. We made a really nice car. So whether you undercoat it or you paint it, whatever, man, it doesn't matter. But we like to do what our customers like, and they wanted the bottom of the car painted, so I made that happen. I'm just venting. Thanks for listening. It's okay. So we got the engine compartment all painted up. That looks good. Firewall's done. You can see that all this stuff is looking awesome. So I actually started to kind of cut and buff this down. I just wanted to see what it would look like. That was premature, but I can't help it. I just wanted to see. All this actually gets engine paneled that we've showed you back there before. We got all the suspension stuff painted, so we got the control arms, the coilovers, all those parts are done. We've got basically two colors we're working with. So this is a custom color we came up with. It started out as a Mercedes color. Bitchin color, looks so good. And then the secondary color, which you can see on our rendering, we've got a stripe that's going to run across the trunk like the old Mopars used to. Runs down the trunk, down the side of the car, and I came up with a color to kind of play off of that brown. It's more like a gold. So we painted the center section of the rear end that color. Like I said, some of the control arms and all that stuff. So should play together super nice. Everything's looking really good. I've got a little more wet sanding to do on the body. Once we do that, I think what we're going to do is go ahead and put it back on the suspension. That way we can check the body one more time, make sure there's no waves, wiggles, anything like that with it down on the suspension. Then we're going to roll it in the booth, mask it up really good, and hopefully start painting it. So I'm going to have to end this one here. It's been a lot of work so far. Next time you guys see it, hopefully we are masked up in the booth, about to pull the trigger and make this one bitchin' charger. See you next time.